Hello once again, welcome to Maths by Miss B. Today's video is going to be about representing an inequality on a number line. If you've watched my last video on inequalities, we did begin to look at the inequality signs. Just as a quick recap, we can do this sign, which we said was used to represent a less than, where something on the left hand side is less than what's on the right hand side. This is a less than or equal to sign. An arrow pointing to the right is greater than, and then with a line underneath that is greater than or equal to. Okay, so that's what you need to remember really. So just zooming in on this one, let's just see what's this representing here. So we've got where n is greater than a -3. That's just written in word format. And then as an inequality, it's written like this, where n is greater than a -3. Now, what we need to be able to do is to represent this inequality on a number line. And the way we do that now, because we've got a greater than sign here, and we are showing on the number line that we're looking at some values which are greater than a -3. So on this normal number line, where you've got positive numbers on the right, you've got a 0, then you've got negative numbers on the left, we start by drawing this open circle at -3. And then we draw a line heading towards the right. Okay, or we can say we can draw an arrow heading towards the right, and it carries on forever really, because there's no end point to this. There's nothing else that tells us where to stop. So we're looking at all the values which are greater than a -3. And this is how it's actually demonstrated on a number line. So you start at -3 and you draw an arrow heading towards the right. Okay, now it's an open circle here. The reason it's an open circle is because there's no equal to sign involved in this inequality. If there was an equal to sign, if this actually did say n is greater than or equal to 3, in that case you would be asked to shade this bit in, because that would represent the equal bit. That would represent that all the values of n are -3 and beyond. Okay, so that's what that represents. Let's just get rid of that. Let's just have a quick look at this one on the right hand side. This one is actually saying n is greater than or equal to a -4, but it's less than 2. So it's greater than or equal to a -4, but it's less than 2. Now, just looking at this inequality, we didn't mention this one in the last video, but let's just have a read at what's on the right hand side here. Okay, so in there we've got n is less than 2. So we know we've got some values which are less than 2, and that's why we're starting here at 2. We're keeping an open circle because there's no equal to sign there, and we need to look at all the values which are less than 2. But they don't carry on forever, going lower and lower. They are stopping at some point, and they are stopping at this point here, where n is also greater than or equal to a -4. Now, you might remember from the last video, or this one when I mentioned here, where that's a less than sign. It is a less than sign when you're reading something from left to the right. But when you read that backwards, it becomes a greater than. So, for example, if I say 2 is less than 4, okay, then just reading that backwards. So, first of all, if we say 2 is less than 4, reading that backwards, then 4 must be greater than 2. Again, if 2 is less than 4, then 4 must be greater than 2. Okay, so that's what this bit represents here. As -4 is less than or equal to n, then n must be greater than or equal to a -4. And the reason they're filled in this circle here is because there's an equal to sign there. Okay, so let's just have a go at some of these questions. Let's see what we can do. Okay, so in this section, what you're required to do is draw the inequalities on a number line. So we're just going to represent them on a number line. So let's just see what the first inequality says. This is saying that n is greater than 2. So we're looking at all the values which are greater than 2, not equal to, but just greater than 2. Then you'd be expected to draw a circle at 2. Okay, it's going to remain as an open circle because there's no equal to sign, and with an arrow heading towards the right. So that's representing all the values which are greater than 2. This one is saying we're looking at all the values which are greater than a -1. So where n is greater than -1. So start by drawing the circle in at -1. It's an open circle because there's no equal to sign, and it's greater than again. So we're heading towards the right. So we're looking at all the values greater than -1. Where n is greater than or equal to a -3. So this time we're drawing a circle at 3, but we're going to fill it in because there's an equal to sign here. Okay, there's a greater than or equal to sign. So we're showing all the numbers which are a -3 or greater than that -3. Okay, moving on to question 4, where it's asking us to represent n is less than 5 on the number line. So we can draw a circle at 5. It's got to remain an open circle, and we're going to represent all the values less than 5. Number 5, where n is greater than or equal to a -1. So we can draw a circle there, fill in the circle because we've got an equal to sign there as well, where all the values are -1 and beyond. So all the values which are greater than or equal to a -1. Number 6, where n is less than or equal to 3. You can draw a circle, again fill it in because there's an equal to sign. And we're showing all the values which are less than or equal to a 3. Now for the next one, we need to be careful here. Let's just deal with this part here first, where n is less than 4. Here's the 4, keep it as an open circle. Now the other part, where -4 is less than or equal to an n. But reading that backwards, we can say if -4 is less than or equal to n, then n will be greater than or equal to a -4. And that means we'll need to draw a circle, a filled in circle at a -4, but all the values of n are greater than or equal to those -4, but they're also less than 4. So we can just draw a line joining up those two circles. So we're representing all the values which are less than 4, but also are bigger than or equal to a -4. Okay, last one. So here, where n is less than 0, it's an open circle, but n is also greater than a -3, because here -3 is less than n, and that must mean n is greater than -3. Okay, so we're looking at all the values between -3 and 0. Okay, in this one, we're going to write down what the diagram's actually showing. We have a number line, we have an open circle at -2 with an arrow heading towards the right. So we're looking at all the values which are greater than a -2. For the next one, we want to show that n is less than or equal to something. Well, how's that shown on this diagram? All these values here are less than or equal to a 4. We know it's equal to a 4 as well because the circle is actually filled in. Okay. For number 3, we've got a circle filled in to represent -1. So we're looking at values which are -1 and greater than -1. So all the values which are greater than or equal to a -1. For the next one, we're looking at all the values which are less than, all the values which are less than 2. All the values less than 2. For the next one, we're looking at all the values that are in between, and also including this -4. Look at all the values between 3 and -4, but including the -4. Okay. There's the -4 and there's the 3. Look at all the values between those two. numbers. Question 6, here we're looking at all the values between 5 and that 1, but not to include the 1 and the 5. So 1 and 5. And the way we read this is that n is less than 5, but n is also greater than 1. So n has got to be between 1 and 5. For question 7, what this represents is all these values between -3 and 6, but we don't include the -3 because there's an open circle, but we do include the 6 because the circle is closed. So we're looking at all the numbers between -3 and 6. We're going to have a less than or equal to sign to represent that filled in dot, and just a less than sign here, as it doesn't include the -3. For the last one, we're looking at all the values between a -5 and -1, inclusive of those values. So we're looking at -5 and a -1 with less than or equal to signs written there. Okay, I hope this makes sense to you. If you're enjoying these videos, please click the subscribe button and also the bell button so you do get a notification when a new video comes up. So thank you very much for joining me once again. Take care. Bye for now.